What are you doing? You will regret this.
You know what they say about karma? Complete nonsense. Karma's for people who sit around waiting for the universe to fix their problems. Me? I prefer the hands-on approach. My name's Tom Crane, and 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Small-town contractor, decent reputation, wife who looked good in heels and knew how to talk to important people. The kind of setup that makes other guys at Murphy's Bar buy you drinks and slap your back like you've won the lottery. Turns out the joke was on me the whole time. The first sign should have been the pregnancy test I found in our bathroom trash. Not because Melanie was pregnant, hell. We'd been trying for 2 years. The problem was the date on the wrapper. I'd been in Boston working a 3-week renovation job when she would have conceived. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the moment my perfect little world turned into a dumpster fire. It was a Saturday in September. One of those crisp Maine mornings when the maple trees start showing off and everybody pretends summer isn't dead. Melanie had invited her work friends over for what she called a casual BBQ, which in my wife's world meant I'd spend my weekend grilling overpriced meat while her corporate buddies judged my beer choices. I was flipping burgers when I heard it. Melanie and her best friend Sasha huddled by the patio door, voices low but not low enough. "So you're really going to tell him?" Sasha asked, twirling her wine glass like she was discussing the weather. "Eventually," Melanie laughed. "I mean, he'll figure it out when the baby comes out looking nothing like him." My spatula froze halfway to the burger. The conversation drifted closer. "Cal's going to support you, right?" Sasha pressed. "Are you kidding? He's already talking about setting me up in that new condo development downtown. Says a woman in my condition shouldn't be stuck in this." Melanie gestured at our half-renovated farmhouse. Fixer-upper. They both giggled like schoolgirls sharing secrets about their first crush. Meanwhile, I'm standing there holding raw beef, processing the fact that my wife is pregnant with her boss's kid and planning her exit strategy over cocktails. Cal Dunstan, Senior Vice President at Eastbrook Development, 48 years old, divorced twice, drove a BMW that cost more than my annual income. I'd met him exactly once at Melanie's company Christmas party. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of confident handshake that says, "I own everything I touch," including, apparently, my wife. The rest of the BBQ passed in a blur. I grilled, served, smiled, and made small talk while my brain cataloged every detail I'd missed. The new jewelry Melanie claimed was costume, the late nights at the office, the sudden interest in yoga classes that happened to be across town from her workplace. After everyone left, I confronted her. "So," I said, loading dishes into our ancient dishwasher, "when were you planning to tell me about Callie?" She didn't even flinch, just dried her hands on the kitchen towel and looked at me like I was a contractor she was about to fire. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," she said. "Honestly, Tom, I'm surprised it took this long. No denial, no tears, no explanation, just cold, matter-of-fact admission." "How long?" I asked. 8 months, maybe 9. She shrugged. "Does it matter? Does it matter? Melanie, you're carrying another man's baby. And you're a small-town contractor who thinks replacing kitchen cabinets is a career." Her voice had that corporate edge she used in meetings. "Cal offers opportunities, growth, a future that doesn't involve living in this falling-down farmhouse forever." I stared at her. 4 years of marriage, and she was talking about me like I was a stepping stone she'd outgrown. "Pack your bags," I said. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Get your crap and get out. Tonight." For the first time, she looked surprised. "Tom, be reasonable. We can discuss this like adults. Adults don't screw their boss and lie about it for 8 months. I opened the front door and held it. Adults also don't plan their exit strategy over wine and appetizers. So get out. You can't just throw me out of my own house. Watch me." I went upstairs, grabbed her expensive suitcases, and started stuffing them with her clothes. Designer dresses, silk blouses, shoes that cost more than my monthly truck payment. She followed, protesting, but I wasn't listening anymore. 10 minutes later, I was dragging her suitcases across our front lawn while she shrieked about property rights and threatened to call her lawyer. Our neighbors, Jenny Whitman from next door, the Kowalski family across the street, watched from their windows like it was dinner theater. Perfect. In a town this size, everyone would know by morning. "This isn't over," Melanie hissed as she threw her bags into her Honda. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Neither do you," I called back. She drove off, tires squealing. I stood on my porch, adrenaline fading, suddenly aware that I was shaking. 4 years of marriage, over in 20 minutes. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt hollow. That feeling lasted until 11:30 that night, when headlights cut across my living room window. Not one car. 3. I looked out to see Cal Dunstan's BMW parked in my driveway, flanked by 2 black SUVs. Men in dark clothes were getting out, big men, the kind who made their living with their hands, just like me, except their expertise ran toward breaking things instead of building them. The doorbell rang. I considered not answering, but these didn't look like the types who'd be discouraged by a locked door. I opened it. Cal stood on my porch looking like he'd stepped off a magazine cover. Perfect hair, expensive suit, cologne that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Behind him stood 2 guys built like refrigerators. Tom. Cal's smile was all teeth, no warmth. We need to talk. I've got nothing to say to you. That's unfortunate. He stepped into my house without invitation, his muscle following. Because I've got quite a bit to say to you. The bigger of the 2 men, shaved head, neck tattoos, looked like he bench-pressed motorcycles for fun, positioned himself between me and the door. The other one, shorter but wider, started examining my living room like he was appraising it. Nice place, Cal said, settling into my recliner like he owned it. Melanie tells me you've been working on renovations for 3 years. What do you want? What I want is for you to understand the situation. Cal straightened his tie. Melanie is carrying my child. She'll be moving in with me next week, and you're going to make this transition as smooth as possible. Smooth how? No lawyers, no custody battles, no drama. His smile never wavered. You're going to file for divorce quietly, accept a reasonable settlement, and disappear from our lives. And if I don't, Cal nodded to the guy by the door. Grant here used to work private security. He's very good at explaining consequences. Grant cracked his knuckles. Real good. I looked around my living room, the hardwood floors I'd refinished by hand, the crown molding I'd installed last summer, the stone fireplace I'd built from scratch. 3 years of weekends and evenings, turning this old farmhouse into something worth living in. This is my home, I said. This is a house, Cal corrected. Melanie is building a home with me, in a place more suited to her aspirations. The shorter guy, I'd later learn his name was Murphy, picked up a framed photo of Melanie and me from our wedding day. He examined it like he was studying evidence, then set it down facing the wall. Here's what's going to happen, Cal continued. You're going to take a little trip, clear your head, think about your options, and when you come back, you're going to see reason. I'm not going anywhere. Actually, Grant said, stepping closer, you are. What happened next was fast and professional. Grant grabbed my right arm, Murphy took my left, and they had me off my feet before I could react. I struggled, but these guys knew what they were doing. Nothing personal, Cal said as they dragged me toward the door. But Melanie was right about one thing. You really don't know who you're messing with. They shoved me into the back of one of the SUVs. Grant climbed in beside me while Murphy got behind the wheel. Cal stayed in my house, probably to make himself comfortable, maybe go through my things. Where are we going? I asked. For a walk, Grant said. Nice night for it. We drove for 20 minutes, heading out of town toward the old logging roads that crisscrossed the forest north of Griggs Mill, the kind of roads that didn't appear on GPS, where hunters dumped deer carcasses and teenagers went to drink beer and pretend they were outlaws. They stopped at a clearing I recognized. I'd hunted here with my father when I was a kid. Murphy killed the engine. Out, Grant ordered. They marched me 50 yards into the woods, far enough that the car headlights were just a dim glow through the trees. Then Grant shoved me to my knees. Strip, he said. What? Clothes off, all of them. Go to hell! Grant's fist connected with my ribs, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping. Clothes, he repeated. Now! I stripped down to my boxers. The October night air cut through me like a blade. Those two. Come on! Another punch, this one to my kidney. I fell forward, hands in the dirt, the taste of copper filling my mouth. Everything. I pulled off my boxers and knelt there without clothes, shivering, humiliated. Grant gathered my clothes and walked back toward the car. Here's your lesson, he called over his shoulder. Some fights you can't win. Smart men know when to quit. The SUV started up and pulled away, leaving me alone in the woods with nothing but darkness and the sound of my own breathing. I don't know how long I knelt there. Long enough for the cold to seep into my bones. long enough for the humiliation to transform into something else, something harder. They'd made one mistake. They'd left me alive. I started walking. No idea which direction led back to town, but motion was better than freezing to passing. Every step sent pine needles and broken twigs into my bare feet. Every breath burned my lungs. But I kept moving. It took 2 hours to find the old logging road, another hour to reach the main highway. By then I was hypothermic, bleeding from a dozen cuts, and probably looked like something that had crawled out of a horror movie. The first car that passed didn't stop, neither did the second. The third was a rusty pickup truck driven by old Pete Kowalski, a retired cop who lived on the outskirts of town. Pete pulled over, took one look at me, and started stripping off his jacket. Jesus Christ, Tom, what happened to you? Cal Dunstan happened to me. Pete wrapped his jacket around my shoulders and helped me into the truck. We need to get you to a hospital. No hospitals. No police reports. I was shivering so hard I could barely speak. Just get me somewhere warm. Pete drove me to his cabin, a one-room affair he'd built as a hunting retreat. He got a fire going while I huddled under blankets, slowly returning to something resembling human. You going to tell me what really happened? He asked, pouring coffee from a thermos. I told him everything. Melanie's affair, the confrontation, Cal's visit, the ride in the woods. Pete listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing darker with each detail. You need to call the police, he said when I finished. And tell them what? That some guys gave me a ride and I got out to take a walk? You think they left fingerprints, video evidence? Pete was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. Finally, he said, So what's the plan? The plan? You're not the type to roll over and play dead. I've known you since you were 12 years old, so what's the plan? I sipped the coffee, feeling warmth spread through my chest for the first time in hours. I'm going to destroy them. How? Haven't figured that part out yet. Pete nodded slowly. Well, when you do, let me know if you need help. I spent the next 3 days at Pete's cabin, recovering and thinking. Pete had a police scanner, and I listened to the chatter, waiting for someone to report me missing. Nobody did. Apparently, Melanie was telling people I'd gone out of town on a job. Perfect cover story. Gave me time to plan. On the 4th day, I walked back into town looking like I'd been working construction in another state. Tanned, rested, ready to get back to normal life. I even stopped at Murphy's bar for a beer and let a few people see me. How was Boston? Jenny Whitman asked when I ran into her at the grocery store. Educational, I said. That afternoon, I drove past my house. Melanie's Honda was in the driveway. So was Cal's BMW. Through the living room window, I could see them on my couch, her head on his shoulder, looking like the perfect couple planning their perfect future. I parked down the street and called Melanie's cell phone. Tom? She sounded surprised. Where are you? Just got back from Boston. We need to talk. This isn't a good time. It's never a good time, Mel, but we're married, we own property together, and you're pregnant. We need to figure things out. Silence on the other end. Then muffled conversation. She was talking to Cal. Fine, she said finally. But not at the house. Meet me at the Riverside Motel on Route 9. Room 12. 1 hour. The Riverside Motel was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions. Perfect for what I had in mind. I got there early and parked where I could watch the entrance. Melanie arrived exactly on time, alone. She knocked on the door of room 12, and someone let her in. I waited 10 minutes, then walked to the window. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap big enough to see inside. Melanie was there, all right. So was Sasha, and Cal, and 2 other people I recognized from Melanie's work. A woman named Linda, who did something in accounting, and a guy named Rick from marketing. They were having a party. Champagne, takeout Chinese food, congratulations all around. Celebrating what exactly? My humiliation? Melanie's pregnancy? Their successful conspiracy? I pulled out my phone and started recording. Can't believe he just accepted it, Sasha was saying. I mean, you literally threw him out of his own house. Tom's not complicated, Melanie replied. He thinks small, acts small, always has. What about the business? Rick asked. Crane Construction's got to be worth something. Community property, Cal said. Once the divorce is final, Melanie gets half of everything, including his client list. And if he fights it, Cal's laugh was cold. He won't. Grant had a very productive conversation with him last week. Tom understands the consequences of being difficult. They all laughed. Even Linda, who I'd always thought was decent. I kept recording for another 10 minutes until they started talking about baby names and furniture shopping. Then I slipped away to plan phase 2. The next morning, I called every client I'd worked for in the past 5 years, told them I was thinking about expanding the business, maybe bringing on some new people, and asked if they'd be willing to provide references. Most said yes immediately. A few asked if everything was okay. Apparently, word was getting around that Melanie and I were having problems. By noon, I had a list of 23 satisfied customers who thought Tom Crane was a stand-up guy and a hell of a contractor. People with influence in town. People who sat on the school board and the town council and the Chamber of Commerce. Phase 2 was about leverage. I spent the afternoon at the town hall, pulling public records. Eastbrook Development had submitted applications for 3 major projects in the past year: a shopping center, a luxury apartment complex, and a mixed-use development that would replace half of downtown's historic district. All 3 projects required approval from the Planning Commission. All 3 had faced significant opposition from local residents who didn't want their town turned into another generic suburb, and all 3 had been approved anyway, despite the opposition. Interesting. I drove to the library and spent 2 hours researching Eastbrook Development online. Cal's company had built similar projects in 4 other Maine towns over the past decade. Same pattern every time: buy up historic properties at below market prices, demolish everything with character, replace it with chain stores and condos, the kind of development that made money for investors and destroyed everything that made a place worth living in. I was starting to understand why Melanie found Cal so attractive. He wasn't just rich. He was the kind of rich that came from eating small towns and crapping out strip malls. That evening, I called Jenny Whitman. "Tom, how are you holding up?" "Better than expected. Listen, Jenny, I need a favor. Anything. You know everyone in town, right? PTA, book club, church committees. Honey, I know what everyone in this town had for breakfast." "Perfect. I need you to spread some information. Quietly, person to person. Nothing on Facebook or social media." "What kind of information?" I told her about the motel meeting, about Cal's plans for Melanie and my business, about Eastbrook's development projects, and what they meant for the town's future. "That fool," Jenny breathed. "He's trying to turn us into another Millfield." Millfield was a town about 50 miles south that had sold its soul to developers 20 years ago. Now it was nothing but chain restaurants and outlet malls, the kind of place where you couldn't buy a cup of coffee without standing in line behind tourists. "Can you help me?" I asked. "Honey, by tomorrow morning, half the town will know what kind of man Cal Dunstan really is." Jenny was better than her word. By Saturday afternoon, the story had spread through Griggs Mill like wildfire. The details got embellished in the telling. That's how small-town gossip works. But the core message remained intact. Cal Dunstan was a hunter who seduced married women and destroyed communities for profit. The first sign of impact came Sunday morning. I was having breakfast at Dolly's Diner when Cal walked in with Melanie. The conversation didn't stop exactly, but it shifted. Lower voices, meaningful glances, the kind of social freeze that turns a friendly place into an Arctic wasteland. Cal noticed, hard not to, when the waitress took 5 minutes to acknowledge their table and the couple at the next booth got up and moved to the other side of the restaurant. Melanie looked confused. Cal looked pissed. They left without ordering. Monday morning brought better news. Old Pete called to tell me that 2 members of the Planning Commission had requested a review of Eastbrook's pending projects. Apparently, some new information had come to light about the company's business practices. "What kind of information?" I asked. "The kind that makes people wonder if proper procedures were followed during the approval process." Tuesday, I got a call from my lawyer, a guy named Bill Hendricks who handled real estate closings and divorce cases. Melanie had retained a hotshot attorney from Portland and was demanding an immediate settlement conference. "She wants the house, half the business, and ongoing support for the next 18 years, Bill told me. "Well, what does she want to give me in return?" "A quick, quiet divorce with no public hearings." "Counteroffer," I said. "She can have the debt." "What debt?" I'd been thinking about this for days. "The house has a 20-year mortgage with 16 years remaining. The business has equipment loans, a line of credit, and outstanding invoices that may never get paid. She wants half of everything? Great. She gets half the liabilities, too." Bill was quiet for a moment. "That's actually pretty smart. Also, I want a paternity test. Tom, I want it in writing that I have no financial responsibility for a child that isn't biologically mine. And if she refuses the test, I'll assume that means she knows I'm not the father." Wednesday brought the first direct retaliation. I was working on a kitchen renovation for the Andersons when Grant showed up at the job site. "Morning, Tom." I kept measuring cabinet dimensions, didn't look up. "Private property. You're trespassing. Just wanted to see how you're doing. Heard you've been spreading stories around town." "I don't spread stories, I tell the truth." "Funny thing about truth," Grant said. "Sometimes it gets people hurt." I set down my measuring tape and faced him. "Is that a threat?" "Just an observation." "Here's an observation for you," I said. "Last time you and I met, you had 2 friends and the element of surprise. Today you're alone. I'm holding a hammer, and Mrs. Anderson is watching from her kitchen window with her phone in her hand. How do you think this plays out?" Grant glanced toward the house. Mrs. Anderson waved at him through the window. "Just be careful, Tom. Accidents happen." He left, but I knew he'd be back, probably with friends. That afternoon, I drove to Pete's cabin and asked to borrow his police scanner. "Expecting trouble?" he asked, hoping to avoid it. I spent the evening listening to dispatcher chatter and making phone calls. By Thursday morning, I had a network of people keeping an eye on Grant, Murphy, and Cal. Construction workers, bartenders, store clerks, people who noticed strangers and remembered faces, small-town advantages. Thursday evening, Sasha called me. "Tom, we need to talk." "About what?" "About ending this before someone gets hurt." We met at Murphy's bar, the kind of public place where nobody could accuse anyone of anything inappropriate. Sasha looked nervous, kept checking her phone and glancing at the door. "Melanie's a mess," she said without preamble. "Pregnancy's hard on some women." "This isn't about pregnancy. It's about what you're doing to her reputation." I sipped my beer, didn't respond. "She made a mistake, okay, but she's trying to fix it. Cal's a good man. He'll take care of her and the baby." "Cal's a hunter who threatens people and destroys communities for profit?" "That's not true." "Which part? The part where he had me knocking and dumped without clothes in the woods? Or the part where he's planning to turn this town into a strip mall?" Sasha's face went pale. "He didn't. Melanie said you went to Boston." "Melanie says a lot of things. Most of them are lies." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the motel room. Sasha's own voice came through clearly. "I can't believe he just accepted it. I mean, you literally threw him out of his own house." "You recorded us?" "Every word. Want to hear the part where you all laugh about stealing my business?" Sasha stared at the phone like it was a snake. "What do you want?" "I want my wife to stop lying about me. I want her boss to stop threatening me. And I want my town to know what kind of people they're dealing with. And if we do that, then maybe I don't share this recording with everyone who was at that motel party, including your husband." Sasha went white. "Dave doesn't know?" "Not yet." She left without finishing her drink. Friday morning brought the first real victory. Bill Hendricks called with news about the settlement conference. "Melanie's attorney wants to postpone," he said, "indefinitely." "Why?" He wouldn't say, but reading between the lines, I think they're having second thoughts about pushing this through quickly. What changed their minds? Hard to say. Could be they heard about the paternity test demand. Could be they're worried about what might come out in a public hearing. That afternoon, I got a call from Linda Martinez, one of the people who'd been at the motel party. She worked in Eastbrook's accounting department and wanted to meet privately. We met at a coffee shop in the next town over, someplace where we wouldn't be seen by anyone who knew us. "I need to tell you something," Linda said. "About the company, about what Cal's been doing." "I'm listening." Linda pulled out a manila folder and pushed it across the table. "Eastbrook's books don't add up. There's money moving through accounts that aren't supposed to exist. Payments to consulting firms that don't seem to do any actual work." I opened the folder. Financial records, bank statements, invoices for services I didn't recognize. "What am I looking at?" "Kickbacks, bribes, whatever you want to call them. Cal's been paying off local officials to get projects approved." "How do you know?" "Because I process the payments. He makes me code them as consulting fees, but I know what they really are." "Why are you telling me this?" Linda was quiet for a long moment. "Because I heard the recording." I stared at her. "What recording?" "The one from the motel. Sasha played it for Rick yesterday. They're both terrified you're going to release it." News traveled fast in a small company. "Are you going to?" Linda asked. "Depends on whether people start telling the truth." She nodded slowly. "What do you want me to do with this?" She gestured at the folder. "Nothing yet, but keep copies. And if anything happens to me, take them to the state attorney general's office." Linda left, and I sat alone with the financial records. understanding for the first time just how deep Cal's corruption ran. This wasn't just about stealing my wife, it was about stealing my entire town. Saturday morning, I woke to find my truck vandalized. All 4 tires slashed, windows broken, "Keep your mouth shut" spray painted across the hood. I called the police, filed a report, made sure there was an official record. Then I called my insurance company and arranged for repairs. Then I called Jenny Whitman. "They're getting desperate," I told her. "Who?" "Cal's people. They vandalized my truck last night." "Those fools, what can I do?" "Spread the word. Make sure everyone knows what happened. And tell them this is what happens when you threaten Cal Dunstan's business." By Sunday evening, half the town was talking about my truck. The other half was talking about Linda's financial records, which had somehow found their way to several members of the town council. Monday morning, the state attorney general's office announced an investigation into Eastbrook Development's business practices. Tuesday, Cal's BMW was found in the parking lot of the Portland International Airport. He was gone. Wednesday, Melanie called me. "We need to talk," she said, face to face. "I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the house, our house, tonight at 8. I got there at 7:30 and parked across the street, waiting. Melanie arrived exactly on time, alone. She looked tired, stressed, like she hadn't been sleeping well. I gave her 5 minutes, then knocked on my own front door. She opened it wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, the most casual I'd seen her dressed in years. Her face was puffy, eyes red from crying. "Thanks for coming," she said. "It's my house." She winced. "Can we sit down, please?" We sat in the living room on opposite ends of the couch where Cal had threatened me 3 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Cal's gone," she said. "I heard. He left a note saying he had to handle some business out of state. Didn't say when he'd be back." I didn't mention the federal investigation or the airport parking lot. Let her figure it out herself. "I'm scared, Tom." "Of what?" "Of being alone, of raising a baby by myself, of what people are saying about me." "What are people saying?" Her laugh was bitter. "That I'm a hooker who destroyed her marriage for a man who abandoned her the moment things got complicated." "Are they wrong?" She started crying then. Not the manipulative tears she used to get her way, but real, ugly sobbing that shook her whole body. "I made a mistake," she said between sobs. "I thought Cal was offering me a better life. I thought you were holding me back." "I was holding you back?" "Yes. No, I don't know." She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "You were content with small things. This house, your business, our life here. I wanted more. So you cheated on me. So I cheated on you." We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she said, "What happens now? You have the baby. You figure out how to support it. You live with the choices you made. What about us?" "There is no us, Melanie. There hasn't been an us since the day you decided Cal's money was more important than our marriage." "I could change." "No." I stood up. "You had your chance to change. You had 8 months to tell me the truth, to end the affair, to try to save our marriage. Instead, you planned your exit strategy and celebrated my humiliation with your friends." "Tom, please." "The divorce papers will be ready next week. Sign them." I walked to the door, then turned back. "One more thing. The paternity test isn't optional. If you refuse, I'll assume the baby isn't mine and act accordingly. But if there's even a chance I'm the father, I want to know. And if you are, then we'll figure out custody and support, but not marriage. Never marriage." I left her crying in our living room and drove back to Pete's cabin, where I'd been staying since the truck incident. "How'd it go?" Pete asked. "About like you'd expect." Thursday morning brought news that Eastbrook Development had filed for bankruptcy. Friday, 3 members of the Planning Commission resigned amid allegations of corruption. Saturday, I was working on a bathroom renovation for the Kowalskis when Sasha showed up. "Tom, can we talk?" I set down my tile cutter and looked at her. 3 weeks of stress had aged her 5 years. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail and she wasn't wearing makeup. "What do you want, Sasha?" "To apologize and to ask for a favor." "I'm listening." "Dave knows about the motel meeting. Someone played him the recording." "Someone?" "Rick. He's trying to save his own A by throwing everyone else under the bus." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What's the favor?" "Don't press charges against Melanie, please. She's 8 months pregnant and barely holding it together." "I'm not pressing charges. I'm getting divorced." "I mean about the fraud, not about trying to steal your business." "That's not fraud. That's just marriage law." Sasha looked confused. Community property, I explained. In a divorce, each spouse gets half the marital assets. Melanie's lawyer was just doing his job. But the recording proves she's a cheating witch who planned to leave me. Nothing illegal about that. Relief flooded Sasha's face. So you're not going to have her arrested? For what? Infidelity isn't a crime in Maine. Then why did you record us? I picked up my tile cutter and went back to work. Because I wanted everyone to know who they were really dealing with. Sasha left, and I finished the Kowalski bathroom by myself, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. The following Tuesday, I got a call from an unexpected source. Tom, this is Grant. Cal's muscle. The guy who'd knocking me and left me without clothes in the woods. What do you want? To make you an offer. I'm listening. Cal's gone. Probably not coming back. His company's finished, and anyone connected to it is going down with the ship. So? So I need a job. I heard you might be expanding your business. I almost laughed. You want to work for me? I want to work for someone who pays on time and doesn't run when things get complicated. Why would I trust you? Because I know where all the bodies are buried, and because Cal never paid me enough to take a fall for him. Interesting. What kind of bodies? The kind that might interest the FBI. Cal wasn't just bribing local officials. He was laundering money for some very unpleasant people. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Can you use a circular saw? Better than I can use my fists. Then you can start Monday. But Grant, if you ever threaten me or anyone I care about again, I'll bury you so deep they'll need a mining permit to find your body. Understood. Monday morning, Grant showed up at my job site wearing work boots and a tool belt. The Andersons took one look at him and asked if everything was okay. New employee, I told them. Former security specialist, looking for a career change. Grant turned out to be a decent worker, followed orders, didn't complain, and he knew enough about construction to be useful. More importantly, he had stories. Cal's been running this scam for 10 years, he told me during lunch break. Different towns, same pattern. Find a place with cheap real estate and corruptible officials, buy up everything worth owning, then develop it into generic suburban hell. Where's the money laundering come in? Overseas investors, Russian oligarchs, Chinese shell companies, Mexican cartel money. They need clean investments in American real estate. Cal provides the opportunities. And you know this how? Because I drove him to meetings, carried briefcases full of cash, stood guard while he made deals with people who don't accept personal checks. I thought about Linda's financial records, about payments to consulting firms that didn't exist. Can you prove any of this? Better than that. I know where he keeps the real books. Wednesday afternoon, Grant and I drove to Eastbrook's office building in downtown Portland. The company had officially closed, but the building was still standing, and Grant had keys. Security consultant privileges, he explained as we rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Cal's office looked like someone had left in a hurry. Papers scattered across the desk, file cabinet standing open, coffee cup still sitting on the windowsill with a ring of mold floating on top. Here, Grant said, kneeling behind the desk. He pressed something, and a section of the wall swung open to reveal a hidden safe. You know the combination? Cal thought he was smarter than everyone around him. Used his daughter's birthday. The safe contained 3 items: a pistol, a stack of cash, and a leather portfolio filled with documents. I opened the portfolio and started reading. Bank statements from accounts in the Cayman Islands, contracts with shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, correspondence with people whose names I recognized from FBI wanted lists. Jesus Christ, Grant. This is RICO stuff. Tell me about it. I've been waiting for the feds to kick down my door for 2 years. Why didn't you turn him in? Grant was quiet for a moment. Because I needed the job, and because I was scared of what would happen if I talked. What changed? You did. Watching you fight back when everyone said you should roll over and play dead made me realize that sometimes you have to choose between being safe and being right. We photographed everything in the portfolio, then put it back exactly as we'd found it. Then Grant called a number from his phone. Agent Morrison, this is Grant Hutchins. We talked about Cal Dunstan a couple years ago. Yeah, I'm ready to talk now. Thursday morning, the FBI raided Eastbrook's offices and seized everything. That afternoon, they arrested 3 town council members and the Planning Commission chairman. Friday, Grant disappeared, left a note saying he was entering witness protection and wouldn't be back. Also left me his tool belt and a piece of advice. Don't trust anyone who offers you something for nothing. Saturday, I drove to the Riverside Motel on Route 9. Room 12 was available, and I paid cash for it. Then I called Melanie. I have something for you, I said. Tom, I can't do this anymore. The stress isn't good for the baby. This isn't about us. This is about Cal. An hour later, she knocked on the motel room door. She was huge now, maybe 2 weeks from her due date, moving carefully and breathing hard. What is this place? She asked, looking around the shabby room. This is where you and your friends celebrated my humiliation 3 months ago. Her face went pale. Tom, sit down, Melanie. She lowered herself onto the bed, wincing. I remained standing. Cal's not coming back, I said. I know. I haven't heard from him in 2 weeks. He's not coming back because he's facing federal charges. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit fraud. The FBI has enough evidence to put him away for 20 years. That's impossible. Cal's a legitimate businessman. Cal's a criminal who used your affair as cover while he looted this town. I tossed the photographs from his safe onto the bed. These are copies of his real financial records. The ones that show payments to Russian crime syndicates and Mexican cartels. Melanie stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You just need to know that the man whose baby you're carrying is a federal fugitive who will never be able to support you or claim paternity. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. Just like I had to figure out how to survive after your boyfriend had me knocking and dumped in the woods. He what? I told her about that night. About Grant and Murphy. About being stripped without clothes and left to freeze. About crawling back to civilization on my hands and knees. By the time I finished, she was sobbing. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, Tom, I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew. It matters what you chose. I walked to the door, then turned back. The baby's yours to raise. Don't put my name on the birth certificate. Don't ask me for support. Don't contact me again. We're done. Tom, wait. I closed the door and walked away. 3 weeks later, Melanie gave birth to a daughter. I heard about it from Jenny Whitman, who heard about it from the nurse who attended the delivery. Looks just like Cal, Jenny said. Poor little thing. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Melanie got the house and the mortgage that went with it. I got my business, my tools, and my freedom. She moved to Portland after the baby was born, got a job with an insurance company, and disappeared from my life completely. Last I heard, she was dating an accountant and pretending her daughter's father died in a car accident. Sasha and her husband divorced 6 months later. Rick got fired from Eastbrook before the company folded and moved to Florida. Linda took a job with the State Attorney General's office investigating corporate fraud. Me? I expanded Crane Construction into 3 counties and hired 8 full-time employees. Turns out that surviving a federal corruption scandal and a public divorce makes you look like exactly the kind of guy people want to trust with their home renovations. But the real victory came 1 year later, when the town council voted to create a historic preservation district downtown. No more chain stores, no more generic developments, no more Cal Dunstans turning character into commodity. I was at Murphy's bar celebrating the vote when my phone rang. Unknown number. Tom, this is Cal. I stepped outside into the parking lot. Thought you were dead. Not yet, but I need your help. That's funny. I'm serious. The feds are closing in, and I need somewhere to lay low for a few weeks, somewhere they won't think to look. And you thought of me? I thought of a man who might understand the value of forgiveness. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Forgiveness? We both made mistakes, Tom, but we're not enemies. We're just 2 guys who got caught up in a bad situation. Cal, do you remember what happened the last time we met? Things got out of hand. I regret that. You had me knocking and left for dead in the woods. That was Grant's idea. Grant works for me now, has for 8 months. Nice guy once you get past the sociopathic tendencies. Silence on the other end. You want to know what forgiveness looks like? I continued. It looks like me not hunting you down and returning the favor. It looks like me letting the federal justice system handle your punishment instead of handling it myself. Tom, but help you, hide you, give you a place to lay low while you plan your next escape? I walked back toward the bar. Go screw yourself, Cal. I hung up and went back inside, where the whole town was buying me drinks and talking about the future we'd saved together. 2 days later, Cal Dunstan was arrested at a truck stop in Nevada. He's currently serving 15 years in federal prison for money laundering and racketeering. Grant sent me a postcard from somewhere in Montana. Just a picture of mountains and 5 words. Thanks for showing me the way. And me? I'm sitting in my workshop on a Saturday morning, building custom cabinets for the new community center, thinking about the difference between justice and revenge. Justice is what happened to Cal caught, tried, convicted, punished according to law. Revenge is what happened to everyone else. Melanie, alone and struggling to raise a daughter whose father will never come home. Sasha, divorced and ostracized. Rick, unemployed and unemployable. All of them living with the consequences of thinking they were smarter than the small-town contractor they decided to destroy. They thought I was too small to fight back, too simple to understand their sophisticated schemes, too weak to survive their casual cruelty. They were wrong about all of it. You want to know the real difference between justice and revenge? Justice is impartial. Revenge is personal. Justice follows rules. Revenge makes its own rules. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very careful and very patient, revenge can look exactly like justice. I learned that lesson in a motel room, in a hidden safe, in the woods where they left me for dead. I learned it from old friends and new enemies, from financial records and federal agents, from small-town gossips and reformed criminals. But mostly, I learned it from understanding that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting everything.